Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I'm your host, Mystery Red, and this is a trigger warning. This story covers material that may be upsetting to some viewers and readers. This is my disclaimer. This beta read in Concord is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a piece of original fiction. We are looking at chapter 1 of Gardens of Becoming by Noant 5039 as they venture into literary fiction. So we're just going to go right on in here and try. Hi, Mystery Red. This is a new project I am trying, genre literary fiction novel. Okay, so here we go. May 1, preparing to plant. The shovel's steel edge scrapes the earth's crust, peeling back layers like skin. A colony of fine intersecting roots cling to the packed clay, each cut met with defiance. Above, ragged blades of grass sprawl in chaotic freedom, resilient against the upheaval. Digging reveals only a battlefield of clods. Beetles scuttle over the disturbed soil, searching for their kin amongst the ruins. They falter and veer, disoriented by the sudden intrusion of light. Their black shells shimmer with a faint royal sheen, catching the sun to reveal a fleeting hint of color, morphing fluidly through shades of purple and green before fading back to black. Something about the beetles reminds Molly of her tangled family tree she'd never had the patience to explore. Until now. Okay, so see, hang on right there. Let's see. As always, your visuals are fantastic. It's beautiful and just has this texture and a richness to it. I really enjoy it. Something about them. I kind of want to say them because we mentioned the Beatles. We're talking about them and what they look like, and I kind of want this to just be them. I'm just going to make a suggestion of that. Something about them reminds Molly of her tangled family tree. So, of her tangled family tree she'd never had the patience to explore. So I feel like there's a word missing here. And something about the Beatles, something about them reminds Molly of her tangled family tree, one that she'd never had the patience to explore until now. So I'm trying to think, I actually need a connecting word here. Or I want one. You're writing really tight, kind of the way I do, where you don't have the excess word. Molly. Okay, something about them reminds Molly of her tangled family tree. And she'd never. When we go from family tree, she'd never. So it feels like there's a word missing right here in between family tree and she'd never. I'm just going to note that. Oh no, I don't want to admit that. No, I don't want to do that. I'm trying to highlight and nope, there we go. When reading, it felt like I needed a word between family tree and oops. She'd never. And what I mean by that is literally like something about them reminds Molly of her tangled family tree, one she'd never had the patience to explore, or that she'd never had the patience to explore. Yeah. So it's either one of the two. When I was reading it, okay, when I read it the way it is, family tree she'd never, it felt like, you know what? I don't need to over-explain this. You caught it. I'm going to stop myself. We're going to move on. Nearby, an earthworm, translucent in the same light, lifts and lowers in soft waves. Unlike the beetle, it moves with quiet resilience, carving its path through the broken earth. No amount of planning softens the impact of breaking ground. Molly inhales the slight gasp, jolted back into her body with the realization she'd been holding her breath, tense from change. No measure of preparedness takes the uncertainty out of the unknown. Here they are, in the backyard of their new home, in a new state, their dreams salty on her lips, but truths about her past remain not known. I think we want unknown. Unknown. What am I doing? Why is that? Okay. Goodness. Oh, my goodness. I'm a little rusty, you guys. It's only been a couple days, but my goodness. I feel like all of me needs to, maybe I need to go get some sugar. Maybe I need sugar. Sugar's bad for you, but I kind of want some. It might help. Or caffeine? Maybe I need caffeine. No, I definitely might not need that either. I'm not really sure. I'm indecisive, but I need something. Her palms burning from gripping the shovel. Her palms burn from gripping the shovel. Pulling at the rubber tip on her right, middle, and pointer fingers, she pulls off the glove, freeing her bare hand to wipe her brow. The insects jive and squirm at her feet. Without breaking her stare, she tugs at the hem of her tank top with her ungloved hand, fanning the damp fabric pressed to her skin. Each pull draws a fleeting breath of cool air, a small mercy that grounds her in the moment. There's something hypnotic about the insects, the way they move so urgently over the loosened mounds of soil, her digging having set off a chain reaction, hurling the underground universe into disorder much like her own. In the garage corner sits a collection of unpacked cardboard boxes, one with minimal print, if there's any ink at all. Molly peels the tape away and flattens each vessel of materialism for its final, higher purpose, a resting place at the foot of the fence line. She lays the boxes in thick, overlapping sheets. Patrick had asked why, after all this time, she wanted to dig into her past. The most obvious answer: motherhood. Her health during the pregnancies, the miscarriage last December, curiosity to understand the bloodline of her babies, the responsibility of rearing children coupled with her loss, their loss, the loss they never talk about, swept her up and stripped her down, peeling away at her layers. It felt like an unspoken inheritance she had to confront. Now, with dirt under her fingernails and sunblock tacky from her sweat, Molly could no longer not know. Molly and Patrick moved in only 9 days ago, a late start to be planting, but they've been dreaming about it for so long, and neither wants to miss spring's narrow window. Not to mention the yard is a blank slate begging for intervention, and God knows she could use the distraction. Garden spider, the angelfish of spiders, weaves her web and watches over the flowers. Yellow stripes give her away. She is a relic, a witness to what grows and fades. Molly considers the family stories she'd never heard, driven by her need to unearth them now. In the morning, the spider's invisible threads trap the dew and sparkle like crystals. Riches amongst abundance, transient amongst change, blossoms on the peach tree like popcorn. Co-creating a garden with the love of her life becomes a study in the art of growing up, a curriculum of patience, adaptation, and forethought. Molly's past is less neat, tangled in soil. She's only barely started to turn, but now that she's started, it feels inevitable. She will dig until she finds what she needs to know. Okay, so you've got an echo on started. Really quick, I'm just going to note that before I forget it. You can fool with that and fix it yourself. Keep one, omit one. Usually keep the first, omit the second, something to the sort. It's an easy fix. Oh my gosh, I love how you're using the earth and turning things over and looking back into the past, digging into something. I'm loving the parallels there. I'm so enjoying this. Okay. May 4th, communities and colonies. Since unpacking the kitchen in their first few days, Molly has rearranged the layout 3 times, fine-tuning, she tells Patrick as she adjusts to the space. He wonders if she would sit still by moving salad plates around had she taken more time to consider their initial placement. The essentials are in place, but most of the boxes still sit unopened in the front room and garage. All right, so we kind of got an echo like on place and placement. I mean, I feel like they're pretty close to in sound that I would probably fool with one of them and just substitute with a different word and it would take care of it. Super easy fix. I'm going to keep going. Outside, Patrick holds the last 2 screws in his mouth like silver cigarettes, his lips pressed tight in concentration. He carefully lines up the wood for the final corner of their new raised garden bed, removes a screw one at a time, and disrupts the quiet with a quick shriek from the drill. I'm imagining that sound. So good job, because I'm in the visual. I'm in the visual, and we all know that sound. Once plants are in the ground, Molly won't be able to rearrange the beds like her kitchen, and there are so many factors to consider. He thinks, lifting up the heavy weight of practicality. So are we with Patrick right now? Okay, so we switched days. We're on a new day. Since unpacking the kitchen in their first few days, Molly. So since you switched days, it's kind of like when I think about switching chapters. When I read the first line and I come to Molly, I immediately start to get into Molly's headspace. Since unpacking the kitchen in the first few days, Molly has rearranged the layout 3 times. Fine tuning, she tells Patrick as she adjusts to the open space. He wonders. So we're in his point of view now, which is a nice transition to switch points of view. Good job. And then, but I immediately thought Molly, and don't ask me why I didn't immediately grasp Patrick, because it's clear here when you say he wonders. That puts me in his headspace. So, because as the reader, I went immediately into Molly's headspace, and I did it because Molly was the first one mentioned here, even though it's Patrick kind of observing her. My brain just hooked on to the first name of the first person mentioned and immediately put me in that point of view. So I'm explaining the thought process from the reader as to why I went where you weren't wanting me to go, even though it seems otherwise clear because you say fine tuning, she tells Patrick as she adjusts the space. Actually, that kind of still seems like it could be interpreted as her point of view, and then immediately it goes to him with he wonders, and from then on I think we're with him. So I would just fool with this open line. I'm going to put a little thing. No, I don't want that. My goodness. No. Fool with this open line just to make it super clear that it's, and don't leave room for misinterpretation. Pretend we really like to give our readers the benefit of the doubt, but I'm feeling like, how did I miss this? But when we came from Molly's point of view, I'm trying to figure out how I missed it, okay? Because it's very clear from the second sentence, why did I miss it in the first sentence? So I've kind of thought it out, I've kind of said it out loud, and I've kind of pointed to where it could be. She tells Patrick as she adjusts to the space. Once I know that it's him and I go back and I reread this, I can see it from his point of view. But then when I initially read it, not knowing that, it made me think it was her point of view, and then it immediately switched to his. So to avoid that disruption, I'm just going to suggest that you fool with this sentence a little bit. And so I'm going to do that very carefully and quit hitting the wrong buttons. Suggest adjusting this sentence a bit. Notes in video. Okay, I'm not going to write all that out. Outside, Patrick holds the last 2 screws in his mouth like silver cigarettes, his lips pressed tight in concentration. That was great. He carefully lines up the wood. We like the drill squeak. Okay. Once plants are in the ground, Molly won't be able to rearrange the beds like her kitchen. And there are so many factors to consider, he thinks, lifting up the heavy weight of practicality. Don't ask me why I was just really into Molly, and it was very clearly Patrick. I was slow on the uptake. Part of it is my brain is probably reading and filtering for a whole bunch of different things, and so I was slow. I apologize. Molly's shoulders and neck are already tight, burdened by the half-ton mound of dirt in the driveway, and the fact that Patrick starts his new job in 2 days fuels a fresh urgency to get the beds planted before they fall back into the restrictive routine of him punching a clock. Okay, so I like what's happening. I like what you're saying, how you're setting up your story and the thoughts around it. Molly's shoulders and neck are already tight. We are in Patrick's point of view. He must know this from a conversation that they had. I'm revisiting this paragraph, coming at it from thinking that way, trying to make sure we don't flip-flop our point of view anywhere. I don't think you do, but I want to keep on the lookout for it, for any place where there can be misinterpretation of whose point of view you're in, just to make sure you don't have that as a problem once plants are. I don't think you do. I mean, so that it's not something I don't want room for misinterpretation. Let's just go with that. Patrick holds the last 2 screws in his mouth like silver cigarettes. So this is him. Once the plants are in the ground, Molly won't be able to rearrange the beds. This is still him because, and we even say that he thinks, and he's knowing she won't be able to rearrange it. Molly's shoulders and neck are already tight. How does he know that? I have to assume that it's from a conversation they had. Burdened by the half-ton mound of dirt in the driveway and the fact that Patrick starts his new job in 2 days. So I kind of, what I'm wondering if we could use his name, use he, maybe him instead of Patrick right there. Let me fool with it just a second. Molly's shoulders and neck are already tight, burdened by the half-ton mound of dirt in the driveway and the fact that he starts his new job in 2 days, feeling a fresh urgency to get the beds planted before they fall back into the restrictive routine of him punching a clock. I don't know. I think it reads well both ways. My thought as to why I was drawn to a point of view thing was, how would he know her shoulders and neck were tight if she's not verbalized that to him? And I know that sounds really dumb, but I'm kind of trying to keep out to make sure that we don't accidentally slip into Molly's and we can't assume anything. So here's the thing. If I've passed documents to a beta reader and had to come back and be like, how do they know this? Because if it's an internal thought that Molly had, how does Patrick know it? But we're in Patrick's point of view, so how can he know her internal thought? Now, so it would have to have come from a conversation, or maybe Molly rubbing her neck and shoulders. I don't know. Perhaps if it was Patrick having an internal thought, which this thing really is, this is his internal thought. The whole thing is his internal thought. Why am I bothered by this part? And it's not, I like the whole thing, which, by the way, it's a really long sentence, but it read well, so it's fine. Or for me, it's fine, my opinion. Molly's shoulders and neck are already tight, burdened by the half-ton. I may be overthinking it, and that's just from me trying to be very careful to keep an eye out for that accidental switch into point of view being something we don't want to happen. We don't want to leave room for misinterpretation. And I'm just wondering if anybody else would say anything to you about it. It probably, maybe not. I don't dislike it. I've received that feedback on something exactly this kind of thing. Like, is it something, how does he know? I'm going to assume it's from a conversation because they're a husband and wife, but I reasoned that. So I gave pause and I reasoned, and therefore I mentioned, because we don't want the reader to give pause. Does that make sense? We want it to flow smoothly. We want it to be very clear and for them to get our message the first time the way we want. So that's my rationale for musing all of that. So I wanted you to understand what I was doing, why I thought it, and how I arrived at it, and why I continued to draw on about it. And now we're going to redirect me onto the next paragraph. With each trip to the driveway, Patrick carts the kids in the wheelbarrow, unloading them in a barrage of kisses as they scoot off to play with toy trucks and chalk. He shovels rich black earth into the air, letting it drift down to be contained. Across the street, a brunette steps off the curb toward them, her curls reminiscent of chrysanthemum blooms, one hand shielding her eyes from the sun's glare. "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood," she calls, closing the gap between the sidewalk and their glorious pile of dirt. "I'm Andrea. I live over on the other side of Claymont, off Scenic. You guys sure have been busy." "Patrick, nice to meet you." He gestures to his dirty gloves, and they both laugh. "These are Hayden and Casey." These two, maybe? Oops. "These two are Hayden and Casey. Can you guys say hello?" he coaxes. Casey steps closer to her dad's legs, her eyes fixed on her red glitter clogs. Her colorful print pants, blue pontel shirt, and sparkly shoes are a reflection of independence in asserting her own fashion. Hayden waves, his wooden police car still in hand, his green eyes sparkling. "Sorry I haven't stopped by sooner. I thought I'd give you some time to settle in." Patrick laughs. "Well, I'm starting to doubt we'll ever be settled." Turning her attention to Casey, still tucked close to her dad, Andrea asks, "Did you know I have a little girl about your age?" Without looking away from her feet, Casey holds up her hand, thumb curled into her palm with 4 small fingers pointing in Andrea's direction. 4. That's how old Brianna is, too. Maybe you could come over and meet her sometime. Andrea's smile shines through her warm tone. From the small side yard gate, Molly emerges, holding a delicate gray wasp nest, deserted and fragile, resembling old cheesecloth. Intricate layers swirled together, encasing honeycomb-like squares within, mummified in their abandonment. "Oh, hi, I just found this in the side yard." Molly nods to Adrea. "Casey, do you see? Be gentle, you two. It's very fragile," she says, holding it open in her hands. Molly watches her kids' curiosity for a moment, cradling the nest like a treasure. Tiny architects of nature build their homes in colonies, working together for a shared purpose. They thrive in their communities, forging connections. As she looks at her husband and her As she looks at her children and her husband, the thought resonates, echoing her own hopes for their family in this new place. The geography is different, but actually it's a long-desired dream for Molly to feel the security of belonging. "Adrea," Patrick says, "this is my wife, Molly." "So nice to meet you," both women say in tandem. "Nice find. Glad it's an empty nest," Adrea teases. "How do you guys like it here so far?" "It's been an adjustment, but I think we'll be happy here," Patrick said. "I hope so. I've been in the area for 11 years. It's been a great place for our family." "Molly, I was just telling Casey my daughter is 4 years old too." "Oh," Molly said, "I had hoped there would be kids their age close by." "We're in the blue house on the corner off Scenic." "We'll have you by some time for the girls to meet." "We'd love that." Patrick asked, "Is that the corner house with the sweet peas on the trellis?" "Yes, it is. Nice to see other gardeners in the neighborhood," she said as she started back toward the sidewalk, spanning her arm as if to showcase the garden in progress around them. Patrick catches Molly's eye, the wasp nest still in her hands, like a memento of hope. The fragility of both is not lost on him. May 11th. Chrysalis to metamorphosis. Mid-morning, Molly sat on a quilt over the spread grass, Mid-morning, Molly sat on a quilt spread over the grass, relieved by how naturally conversation flowed between her and Adrea. Watching Casey run and play with 4-year-old Sophie was heartwarming, but Molly found herself selfishly even more excited by Adrea's stories, her upbringing with 5 siblings, meeting her husband in college, exposing Sophie to diverse cuisines, and her journey of self-discovery after leaving the Mormon church just a few years before. Their lives had followed different paths, but sitting together on the blanket with the damp, lush grass beneath them, their quest to make sense of this world and their roles in it, especially in the skin of motherhood, bound them with a magnetic force. Reflecting on being in their 30s, Molly said, "My brain hasn't caught up with how I see myself and who I am now." "I guess that edible gummy's kicking in," Adrea said. "I sure hope so," Molly picked at the white clover flower. "But my ego still pictures a younger, blonder, more carefree version of me, where in reality I am worried about parking close to the cart return on errands, finding a good dermatologist, hits on Ancestry.com, and of course this baby weight." "Reality and our memories can be cruel," Adrea said, poking at her tummy. "I think I follow. It's been a vulnerable time since leaving the shame culture of the church. I feel like I am trying to heal my old self and get to know my new self at the same time." I kind of think that could be its own sentence right there. Yes, coming to terms with the past and knowing who I am now. Exactly that. Deep. Laughing, Adrea said. "Neighbor, friend, soul sister, welcome home, girl." Healing is an amendment. For the earth, coffee grounds, eggshells, peat moss, and manure. For our soul, Molly thought, creativity, kindness, sunlight, and bees. May 18th. The puppy screams of lust. The poppy. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I said puppy. It's Poppy. Oh my goodness. We're going to try that again. May 18th. The poppy screams of lust. Language falls short. Complexities of being human transcend words. Nature, however, speaks in silent gestures, insisting expression needs no words. How does one convey feeling without sound? How does one describe a longing that lives beyond the reach of dialogue? In the garden, anticipation has its own syntax, a hidden rhythm of roots and petals beating beneath the soil, waiting to emerge. The poppy in the terracotta pot on their deck stirs. On the verge of opening, each velvet petal clings to the pod, flesh red, like damp silk brushed with undertones of blue. To be so red you're blue, Molly thinks, is to be drenched in desire, waiting to be touched with a fierce, vital hunger. Casey and Hayden are staying the night at Patrick's sister's, and for the first time, they share their new house completely to themselves. Outside, I'm musing. They have their new house entirely to themselves? Are they sharing it? They're always sharing it with their children and each other. I don't know. They have the house to themselves? Do we? That's a word choice, I think. so I'm not going to note it. Back here, as beautifully as this read, I wondered whose mind we were in until we got to Molly. It was Molly, but it took me a minute to get there. We got down here when I realized. So we were on the third paragraph before I realized I was in Molly's point of view. I would automatically have assumed I was in Molly's point of view, except we did have a point of view switch with Patrick back there on that second date. Where were we? May 4th, Communities and Colonies. Yes. So, let me get back down here. I'm just going to note all that, and I'm not going to make notes on the document. I'm just going to verbally note it for you because it's kind of like an observe and a thought, and it doesn't do what you want with that information is where I'm going to go with it. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. So, Casey and Hayden are staying the night at Patrick's sister's, and for the first time, they share their new house completely to themselves. Outside, the garden holds its breath. The weight of spring pressing down on the lettuce and cabbage leaves drop under the sun's warmth, safe and seen in his admiration. Is there a word to surmise the ache that yearns to be unwrapped and revealed? I'd probably omit that part. I'd probably omit that. Let's see. Why would I do that? When I read that line, I want it to end at bloom. The rest of it feels like extra, I think. It's lust, so it's going to feel intense and short like that, or shorter, intense, and trying to muse it out. It's a thought. It's nothing. I'm just going to keep going. There's a moment when the poppy's sheath shoots free at last, but first there is that heartbeat. Just before is a fraction of breath held between longing and release. Everything is transient, but this is fleeting. Don't dare blink. They're intoxicated, high on the crimson heat of love coursing through their veins. Nature says what words cannot. Oh, right here, I'm pausing and then I'm reading it. I've resorted to pausing it so that I can read it out loud and then coming back with a comment. Okay, let's see. I kind of want the word lips right there, but you've got it up here, so I guess that's probably why that might be why you didn't. Not a big deal. Oh, you know what? On this, I would just say him. There you go. That's what I would do there. Okay, I gotta pause again. Oh my gosh, girl, you're so good at this. To call the flower delicate would be naive, her expression divine, her vulnerability a strength, and her language full of heart. May 29th, wrangled catnip and trellising tomatoes. If the bees didn't love the catnip so much, I would yank it out altogether. This is the second time I've cut it back since we moved. I'm going to pause. So, if that's Molly, go ahead and put a tag there because it's our opening line of this date. We want to make sure we know who our point of view is and who is speaking right out the gate. So I'm just going to say, this is one of those rare situations where I will tell you to add a dialogue tag. So just adding an action or dialogue tag because it is the opening line of a new date, if that makes sense. And you've got my musings, so you're good. Patrick talks over his shoulder. I don't see what the problem is. I like a plant that wants to grow. Can you smell that? Molly asks. hurling a branch in his direction, her voice sharper than usual. When I get in the corner to trim it, that pungent stink sticks to everything it touches. Patrick resumes lacing jute through the wire, weaving a trellis system he hopes their tomato branches will soon climb, clinging to the support he's rigging for them. A safety net, a plan, a precise order lends him comfort, as if his hand can control the garden in ways that seem beyond Molly. The logic behind where she dedicates her energy is a mystery to him. She'll complain about the catnip, scowl at its intrusive plight, and yet keep it for the bees. Really, she is the spirit of their family, the way she gets excited over mushrooms or rusts the bloomed-out sunflowers on stones for the birds. But by God, she drives him crazy, too, as slow as he is efficient, as wishy-washy as he is decisive. Patrick needs tangible things, and she craves feelings. Feelings! There is no security in feelings. Everything with Molly seems passive. The kids drift like the bees, buzzing through her gentle nudges. Last Tuesday, he'd watched their son shrink back from his voice. He'd shouted, his exhaustion boiling over in the still heat. Molly had looked away, her gaze settling not on him, but on the neighbor's lit window beyond the kitchen. In his mind, order is critical. Discipline needs a voice, something loud enough to turn around and plant their feet on the ground. All he wanted was to enjoy the garden before the day turned too hot. But guilt is stubborn, circling back like the bees to her catnip. Sometimes he fears that familiar anger, the way it casts shade on his perspective, creeping up through him and twisting him into someone else, into his father. Molly may give too much, he thinks, but at least she doesn't lose herself. He's not sure he can say the same. He cuts another piece of twine, finding himself envious of Molly's quiet approach, though he'd never say it. How easy it must be to let go, to defer to someone else. Watching her crouch inspecting the strawberries for just the right ripeness, he glimpses a different kind of strength, a quiet, unyielding way of tending to things that don't resist her. Pulling the jute tight, he lets the thought drift away. Love that. Love it. Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. Okay. All right, this was a treat. I like your beginning here. I like it. I like how you're using the garden and their yard and their new home, focusing on using the elements outside to tie it back to their moments in their life, what is happening, and giving us little glimpses of who they are and what they're thinking about, what's going on. And always, your writing is just so beautiful. I love your voice. It is just great. So, I am here if you need me for chapter 2, and I like it. I think you found your thing. I'm glad you found your thing. I'm really happy for you right now. And guys, I will see you next time on Mystery Red Reads.